Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Drew Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry, from sensory design experts like Dr. Hobie Wedler, who helps brands think beyond the visual, to today's guest, Blake Hershey, who leveraged his background in aerospace to create an app that uses machine learning to recommend the perfect bottle of wine. Today's episode, it's sponsored by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind marketing strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and connects you with your ideal customers. In short, if you're a business looking to retain a winery or craft beverage producer as a client, Barrels Ahead will figure out a plan to make it happen. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Heather Pollack from ACIC. On last week's show, Heather and I talked about the latest innovations in closures. Check out that episode to learn how to align your wine and spirit closures with your brand's environmental initiatives. I am super excited to talk with today's guest, Blake Hershey from SIPT. Now, Blake has a pretty unique background. He comes from the aerospace industry, working at NASA and JPL. Leveraging this experience, Blake recognized an opportunity to use machine learning and computer vision to create a personal sommelier and wine marketplace app that helps wine drinkers find and easily purchase wines they'll love before they even try them. SIPT is heavily focused on the millennial demographic and hits all the high notes of what younger wine drinkers are looking for: convenience, ease of use, good deals, supporting social causes, interacting through humor and memes. Welcome to the show, Blake.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you for being on. So, Blake, tell us about yourself and how you got into the wine industry from aerospace.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I'm a fairly new entrant to the wine industry. We started SIPT, just the concept of it, in 2019. After COVID hit, we had to pivot a little bit. So it delayed our launch of our mobile app, which is out for just about 3 months now.
Yeah, I was on it. That app's great. Well, I can't wait to dive into it. But now, how did the idea of SIPT come about?
Yeah, so the inspiration was quite simple. My fiancé actually was my inspiration, like for many of us. She was on a girls' trip for the weekends, and because I'm into wine, all of her friends think that she's a wine guru as well. So they go out to lunch and dinner and always hand her the wine list. And she really doesn't know about wine as much as I do. And she certainly doesn't know what all her friends like. So she took her best guess, and some were hits and some were misses. And when she came back, she was telling me the story, and she said, like, just one simple phrase that ignited the idea for SIPT. She's like, I wish there was an app that would tell me which wines I'm going to like on a wine list. And I thought there would have been one already. So I started doing research, and I couldn't find any. And, around the same time, I was kind of looking at starting my own company and going into consumer tech. So I started doing research, and it seemed like a really good opportunity. And it was something that I knew my friends would use, right? And that's a big thing. Is like, is it useful? So we started down the path of, building SIPT.
Well, that's amazing. So you started looking at restaurant wine lists. And so you could just scan the list, and it would recommend, based on your prior tasting experiences, the wine that you should be picking for that meal. Yeah,
more or less. So essentially, after the user signs up for SIPT and they rate a couple wines, so we can begin to learn their preferences, you take a photo of a wine list and we turn it into a digital wine list. So it has like the description of the wine, food pairings, and other useful data. But the big thing is what we call taste match. So that's the percent from 0 to 100 that aligns to your personal preferences. So you scan it, you get the digital wine list, and it will show you the percent score for how much you're going to like each wine before you ever try it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was on the app and I filled out my little taste preferences, and I was surprised. It was pretty spot on with what it was recommending.
Did it work?
Yeah, it was working. I liked it.
Yeah.
So now it's an online marketplace. We're kind of jumping ahead here on the early. So the early days of SIPT was designed for wine lists.
But yeah, so the early days of SIPT was really designed for like the wine dining experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, we weren't planning on selling any wine. it was really about guiding people to restaurants based on their food preferences and their wine preferences. And then of course, using kind of like Google Translate plus Netflix combined to help them understand a wine list and make, the right decisions. And we were really close to launching that. We were probably about 85% of the way complete. And then COVID happened and the entire world shut down. And of course, no one really had a use for a restaurant focused app that we'd spent like a good 12 months on. So we were looking at the market and trying to understand where are people going during COVID for their wine, and wine sales online were booming. I think overall in 2020, it went up 66%, online 243%. So we thought we would pivot to, create a platform for desktop and online. And we decided to create a plugin. Now that is probably the biggest lessons learned from my entrepreneurial journey so far. The plugin is actually a really great experience, but when you look at it from a marketing standpoint, 90% of digital ads are served on mobile. And if you're serving up an ad on mobile and you want to use a Chrome extension, one, you have to have Chrome installed on your phone, which means that not a lot of Apple users have that. And then two, you can only add it to your desktop, but then you have to go onto your desktop and then go into like Google's extensions and then enable it. So getting people to go from awareness to actually into the experience was really challenging. But we learned a lot, which was great. Like we really learned about the marketplace experience and what challenges people had and like what type of experiences that we were giving them that were resonating and which ones we could improve. So we, quickly realized that we needed to take this back to a mobile app, whether it was going to be a marketplace or a restaurant app. So we redesigned it, reskinned it, and developed it, and we launched it in March.
That's amazing. It's an excellent pivot there. It's a good seamless experience. So talk to me a bit about, because for the not me at all, know much about computer vision or machine learning. How does that go into the app, and give a high level overview of how that works?
Yeah, it's a big question. And, I have a lot of employees that are much more intelligent than I that I'm sure could answer the question better. But, at a high level, we use machine learning models. They're trained on a lot of wine characteristics. So varietal, region, price, alcohol percent, and many others. And based on that, we can calculate the similarity between different wines. And then we combine that with something called a collaborative filter model. And that really does the same thing, but it finds similarity between different users. So like, let's say you and I have rated 5 wines the exact same. And then there's one other person that we're with, and they've rated 4 of those wines the exact same, but not the 5th one. So there's a statistical probability of how much they're going to like that 5th wine. So we combine those 2 models into a single number, which we call taste match.
I get it. Oh man! So then the more data you have, the better, the more accurate it is.
Absolutely. I mean, AI and machine learning, it's very complex on a certain level, but on the other level, it's really all about the data. It's just like learning in general. Like the more we learn, the better we get, and that's the same thing for these models.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great. As far as the SIPT experience.
One moment.
As far as the SIPT experience goes, with now, is this a solo experience, or is people are on the platform and they've got groups of friends? I know we had talked maybe in the pre-show about something like that, where you can get aggregate data.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a spoiler alert. But,
oh shit!
No, it's totally fine. That wine is social, so SIPT has to be social. Nobody wants to drink alone. So we're deploying some features that we call a combined taste match that allows groups of up to 4 to combine their preferences to find the best wines for the entire group. So that works at a restaurant if you're dining out with like your significant other and another couple, or if you're shopping online. And another really cool thing is you can see the top taste matches of your friends as well. So friends and family. So Mother's Day just passed, but if we had that release, I'd be using that to figure out which wine I should send my mom, because SIPT is probably going to know better than I know, and perhaps even she does.
That's phenomenal. I can only Imagine how useful that's going to be. How many times I've gone to a restaurant and we're at a six top and someone hands me the wine list and I'm just assuming that everybody thinks I know about wine and they want me to pick. It would be so nice to know what's the common denominator on this list.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard to get into people's heads, and it sounds like you had a similar experience as what my fiance had when she came up with the idea for SIPT.
Yeah. So as far as SIPT, how are you generating brand recognition and building an audience?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we use a lot of traditional marketing strategies. So namely digital. So Facebook ads, Google ads, Apple ads, and we're very active on our social media. So, we really utilize like meme humor, and we partner with influencers within the food and wine and like lifestyle spaces to reach people that would benefit from, what SIPT offers. So like that's the traditional, they call it PESO, pay to earn, shared, owned marketing. But our team is really focused around what we call product-led growth. And that's all about understanding your users' desires and challenges, and then building out experiences to solve those. So it's all about really aligning your entire company around who your users are, what they want, and building empathy for them. And that's done with like a marriage between data and just talking to your users as much as you can. We try to do at least 5 to 8 calls with our users a week.
That's
and
smart.
We rotate everybody in development, QA, and marketing on those calls. So they're all getting exposed to how our users feel about the experience and identifying new opportunities to offer more value. From a data side, there's this thing called a habit moment. And a habit moment is like an action or a series of actions where a user is getting enough value where they continue to come back and use your product. So maybe it's the wine list scanner or the taste match for us. So what you kind of do is you look at the top 25 or 10% of your users that are the most active and retained. And then we run something called positive and negative correlative analysis. This is getting a little in the weeds here, but
that's great.
That's finding the statistical probability of users being retained long-term based on a set of key actions. And that tells us where those power users are really finding true value. It makes them come back and use SIPT on a frequent basis. And you can have multiple habit moments. Like for SIPT, we discovered purchasing wine and using our wine list scanner are delivering the most value for people to continually come back and use it, which is great because that's what we were hoping for. But that's no surprise. But you have to kind of figure out what do those users have in common that got them to that moment. So you kind of work your way backwards to what we call the aha moment. And that's the early core value that correlates to long-term retention. For Facebook, their famous aha moment was discovering 7 friends in 10 days. If a new user added them, then they were most likely to be retained for up to 6 months. For SIPT, we found 3 aha moments. So one is users that have had 4 sessions within 21 days. 2 is users that rate their first wine during their first session, so the first time they open up the app. And 3 is users that rate 3 wines within 14 days. And all of those are 40% or more likely to be retained 6 weeks later than those who have not. So we use that information along with speaking to as many users as we can to redesign experiences to help new users reach those moments where they can find that core value in SIPT. And as more time passes, we get more users, we discover new moments where customers are finding value.
Have you been surprised by any of these aha moments that you unearthed?
I think that the 4 sessions in 21 days is it's quite interesting. It's like a huge jump between 3 sessions and 4 sessions. Like the correlation between 3 sessions was sub 20%. And then at 4 sessions, it was 43%. It's that's a huge jump for just coming back that 4th time. So now my question is, what are they doing when they're coming back? It's actually leading them to continue to come back. Does it take 4 sessions for them to find the wine list scanner or to finally buy a wine? So we're doing additional analysis, and we've only been on the market for about 2.5 months. So the longer time goes on, the more data we can get and answer those questions. So it's just a series of asking yourself questions and then using data and talking to your users to get the answers for those. And then, to your point earlier about combining taste match, if you will. So the other aspect of product-led growth is growing your user base. So the first part I talked about is retaining and adding value. And that always leads to growth because word of mouth. The other aspect is how do you get your users to spread word of mouth for you and, essentially become your evangelist. And that's all about social interactions and allowing people to have shared experiences on your platform with their friends and family. And what better industry to do it in than wine? Because nobody wants to drink about it. In the next 6 to 8 weeks, we'll be revealing some new features that we think are going to be game changers in the industry. And so
this will actually be out probably at the end of August. So a lot of the stuff we're talking today might actually come to fruition.
That would be amazing. I'll let you know as soon as we release it.
That's awesome. Well, little previews here. Back to this product-led growth. What would you? So it's really a model where you go through the persona and you build it. You build something that you think will match that persona, and then that leads to the growth. Is that correct?
Persona is one side of it. So persona is really persona is like who your people are, your users, their shared characteristics. Then there's like behavioral personas, and that's what you were getting at. And yes, so you figure out who are the people that like your product the most, using it the most. What are their shared behaviors? And those shared behaviors are obviously showing a direction of where they're finding value. And then you redesign the product to help more people discover that value more quickly.
It's great. It ties in. It's kind of flipping story marketing on its head, because on that paid earned search media, usually you're bringing people into your story and they want to latch on to get more of what you're doing. Whereas what you're doing is kind of you're helping people create their own story, and you're providing them the utility for them to get where they want to be.
Exactly. So, we have an assumption that, people download SIP because they find it interesting. Maybe they want to know what wines they're going to like, or they want to try the wine list scanners. So our goal is how do we get them to those points of value as quickly as possible? Because, when you download an app and you don't have any instructions the first time, you can go a lot of different directions. And if you don't go the direction where you're going to find the value, then why would you come back? So it's our job to help them find that value.
I could totally see that. If you're a little unsure about wine, you've got Sipped on your phone. You go into your little dinner party at the restaurant. Suddenly you look like a superhero, can navigate the list. You've got the latest technology, and you've become somebody that you wanted to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big thing for restaurants is sommeliers, in fact, love us because a lot of times they're answering their friends and networks questions of what wine did I have or what should I get, and they say just use Sipped. But also, most of the restaurants in the world don't have sommeliers or professionally trained beverage staff. So, these less dense population areas around the country, we allow people and the restaurants to give them a great experience in the absence of having professionals there to assist them.
Oh, absolutely. That's great. What were some of the challenges? So you've got the product-led development. What do you see one of the biggest challenges in taking that direction to building out your brand?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's a few wine apps out there already. So I think that's one of the challenges is just as an upstart, building out awareness and getting people into the experience, and then of course through product-led growth to the value that would keep them coming back. And then, we touched on this previously, but really COVID was the biggest challenge that we faced. It's essentially a year's worth of work that we tried to dust off and use in a post-COVID world, which, required a lot of effort, a lot of experimentation. But yeah.
On the So getting back to the Sipped app. So as far as the distribution, you can buy wines on the app. It's not just for picking out wines at the wine list. You can actually set up your own, purchase wines. How does the fulfillment of that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're a marketplace. We don't own any of our products. And we're a very personalized marketplace based on taste match. So our retailers have, X amount of wines, and we surface the best wines to our users, and then they can purchase directly through the retailer, but through the Sipped app.
Oh, that's amazing. So that frees you up from having just a tremendous amount of inventory, and also frees up the distribution part so that you can concentrate more on the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we care about the experience, and we care about our users first and foremost, of course, but our job is to also help our retailers. So how can we direct our users to retailers that have products they're going to love? When we do that, then it's a huge win for us, and it's a huge win for the user and a huge win for the retailer.
Oh, that's amazing. How's it been building out this retailer network?
Oh, it's been challenging, actually. It's one is again, word of mouth, and figuring out the key decision makers, being able to get them to have a meeting, and then them going through their processes of decision making. And then, of course, once they get onboarded, there's just a bit of the data management for integration, but we're getting very good at that. And we try to make it as painless as possible on our retail partners.
That's amazing. And it seems to me, it seems like a no-brainer. I come from the retail side of the industry. I ran a wine store for many years, helped independent wine stores sell their wines. To me, it looks like a no-brainer. It's another channel, which you're always looking for another channel to sell your wines.
Yeah, we're trying to make it a no-brainer. So I'm glad that you see that. I think a lot of it is, a lot of these retailers are really good, but they don't have a lot of staff, and they have a lot of competing, priorities, and I'm sure they get slammed with a lot of emails from a lot of great companies in the industry that are trying to help them sell more. So they have to kind of wade through those different options and make the decisions that they think are going to be best for the growth of their business.
Oh, sure. Do you just work with retailers, or would you also work with wineries that sell direct to consumers?
We would love to work with wineries. We haven't established any producer relationships yet, but at the end of the day, I have a lot of respect for the wineries. They're the ones that are making the great juice. And DTC is such a valuable channel for them, and it's also valuable for the user because they get connected to the actual person making the wine more, and they can explore more of their wines. And then, hopefully eventually join their wine club and visit them and, wherever their vineyard is.
Now, how would a winery or a retailer go about becoming a partner?
But just partnerships at sip.com. If you email us there, we'll be happy to set up a call with you and go over the services that we offer.
That's amazing. Do you offer any kind of marketplace feedback so that they know, help them on a benefit in that side?
Yeah, absolutely. So we run analytics on, traffic, interactions with their products, add to carts, and checkouts. And in the future, we're working on providing data on what our users are rating and reviewing their wines, so they can really get sentiment analysis and down to a geographical area, so they can understand, okay, and we have big penetration perhaps in Texas amongst 25 to 34-year-olds. And I think that's very valuable to, help them inform their marketing decisions moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a lot of these smaller independent stores, they lack that kind of data analytics that the big chains might have. To be able to empower some of them would be I can see tremendous value in that. As far as so for retail stores, do you have a success story, an example of how a retail store is achieved?
Yeah, actually, so we recently incorporated Wine Spies. They're this wonderful outfit out of California that does flash sale deals, and now we have a flash sale section on our home screen that offers their discounts between 20 and 70%, and they're just getting a lot of interaction and a lot of play with our users. And ultimately, Wine Spies has a great service and great prices. We just have users, and I think everybody pretty much doesn't mind getting 50% off a bottle of wine. Oh. So we're able to get them in front of people that they previously hadn't been exposed to.
That's amazing. As far as getting exposure and building a brand, or even just sort of a startup looking to make an entryway into this space, what advice would you give a startup that wanted to break into online wine or an online wine tech app?
Yeah, absolutely. So start lightweight when you're testing your assumptions. Whatever you want to break into, I'm sure you have an idea, and there's a ton of great ideas in people's minds to solve a problem that you might have, but it might not solve a big enough problem, or not everybody or not a lot of people have that problem. So, before you really start a business, get out of the house, talk to people, use SurveyMonkey to do surveys. You really want to validate what they call jobs to be done. So like, what are their core challenges and the desires? And like, once you do that, that informs the type of features or services that you're going to offer. Then you start just sketching like this of what you think, the experiences should be. Then test that with people. And then eventually you get to what we call like a high fidelity prototype. So that's using like a design tool like Figma or Sketch. And it's like interactive. And then you can pay to have people test that. And you probably want to have at least 100 people, and you can get feedback on like, are they accomplishing the mission? Are they clicking in the right places? And once you know that you've hit that, that's the first time you should start developing code.
Very good. That's great advice. I think I've failed to do many of those things in a couple past ventures. One, I failed to I waited too long to bring the product to market. Had to be perfect. Take the minimum viable into market. And Absolutely. 2, we just jumped straight into coding because we thought we knew what we wanted to do. And suddenly we had this huge code base and realized it wasn't written quite correctly for what our clients wanted.
Yeah, in the beginning, we made some of those mistakes as well. So, it's really learning from your mistakes. And the best way to not have really costly lessons learned is to start small. And everything's really about building confidence that you have the right product that you're bringing to market. So if you can do it in small steps, and each one of those adds additional confidence or allows you to iterate to get that confidence, I think that's what you really want to do. Because writing code is the most expensive, part of any venture. Absolutely.
And it's also resisting because you always, well, if it's only a little bit more, people understand how great it is. Don't look at it now. It's too early. It's it's overcoming that fear of feedback, because you're never going to be able to get feedback on that final product. And one of the things that I've learned and what you're saying right now is get out there, get the feedback early on, even if they don't understand the whole concept, because you're going to be able to build a better concept at the end.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah, that was long entrepreneurial journey to learn that. You guys.
Well, it sounds like a lot, and it is, So, you really have to, realize that you have a long road ahead of you. And if you take those extra steps, you're going to have a much higher probability of success in the end. I think the other thing is, you can't do it all yourself. You have to build a team. It's very difficult. Like building any company these days is very complex. Like I can't sit here and pretend to know that like I can do all the coding and the machine learning and the marketing. It would be impossible. So, you can moonlight and keep it as a side hustle for a while, but sooner rather than later, you'll need to go full time. And then, finally, I would say, find a good co-founder that complements your skill sets within the domain that you're going into. So for me, I know a little bit about wine. I probably actually should have brought on more of like a CTO earlier on to, set like coding guidelines and really set us up for growth from like a technical perspective. But now I'm lucky enough to have a wonderful team. It's just, like you said, the hard lessons learned and the path to get there.
Yeah, no, it's so important to be a part of the right team and actually just figure out who is the best for each seat. And that does take a lot of time at a startup to fill out, because you tend to start doing everything yourself. And then you start filling out some of the things you don't like doing, but it may not be what you need to fill out at that time.
Yeah, that's very true. And, the other thing is like, how do you get people inspired around your vision? That if you want really talented people in whatever industry you're in, they're going to have their choices of places to go. And, you're a startup, you're not going to be able to pay as much as, a top winery or a top tech company like Google. So like, what is the value that you can give them? Obviously, if they're passionate about what you're going into and they're bought off on the vision, like that's really what you want to look for.
How do you get people inspired about the vision? That's the $1 million question.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we kind of say, Amazon started with books. We started with wine. So our vision is to become the Amazon of alcohol in the future. And to have taste match be like one of the primary criteria when users are making buying decisions. So that's going to change the way that, people, interact with and make purchase decisions. And I think that's a pretty compelling vision, but not for everybody. If you don't drink wine, it's not nearly as compelling because you can't relate to it. Of course, there's other aspects where they can be really passionate about, like the technical challenges, but it's really if they can relate to that on a personal level and on a cultural level, they're going to be the ones that are coming up with ideas and their brains are thinking outside the clock. That those innovations are like what really drives value to the user in the end.
Oh, absolutely. So as far as your own personal, what are you drinking these days?
So I'm going to slaughter this pronunciation, but Chateau Pugao. It's a Chateauneuf du Pape.
Oh, yes.
Grenache Syrah Mourvedre, I believe. It's just delicious. It's bold, but it's super smooth.
Love the spicy.
Yeah, it does have a nice spice to it. I was in Chateauneuf du Pape when we got engaged, and I discovered it there. And I found a local retailer who's actually on SIPT, Culver Woodley. And cool. they have like 4 different vintages of it and at a great price. So I just pop in, grab it there, and we usually enjoy it on the weekends.
That sounds good. I love a good Chateauneuf. I've got to check that out. Sorry, seems to be a raceway outside my office right now.
Oh, I'm not hearing anything.
Oh man, I think two motorcycles are just drag racing by. So yeah, the Chateauneuf, I love it. Sipped. I got to check that out. So Blake, where can people find more about you?
Just go to sip.com or LinkedIn. Of course, you can always just email me directly. I respond to just about every email as long as it's not a solicitation. So my email is blake@sip.com. That's awesome. And they can download Sipped both on the App Store?
Yep,
app and Play Store. So Google and Apple.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Blake, for being on the show today.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I love your show. And I think you're doing great work for the industry.
Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.